Prose 4. But you may say that high public office makes the man who receives it honorable and worthy of reverence. Do you think that such offices have power to make those who hold them virtuous and to free them from their vices? On the contrary, public honors usually reveal wickedness rather than correct it. And so we often complain that these honors are given to the worst men. Catullus, for example, called Nonius an ulcer, though he occupied high office. You can see then the disgrace that comes to evil men who receive honors. Their unworthiness would be less obvious without the publicity of public recognition. In your case, could any threats of danger have persuaded you to share public office with the Catullus, once you had found him to be a scoundrel and a spy? We cannot judge men worthy of respect on account of the honors given them, if we find them unworthy of the honors they have received. But if you have found a man distinguished by his wisdom, could you think him unworthy of honor, or of the wisdom which is his? Certainly not, I answered, for virtue has its own honor, and this honor is transferred to those who possess virtue. Since popular acclaim cannot accomplish this, clearly it does not have the beauty which is characteristic of true honor. More attention should be paid to this point, for if public contempt makes men abject, public acclaim makes wicked men even more despised, since it cannot make them worthy of honor and exposes them to the world. But public rank itself does not escape untouched, for unworthy men tarnish their offices which they hold by infecting them with their own disease. And to prove further that true honor cannot be attained through these specious dignities, think what would happen if a man who had been many times consul should go to some uncivilized foreign countries. Would the honors which he held at some home make him worthy of respect in those places? But if veneration were a natural part of public honors, it would certainly be given in every nation, just as fire always gives heat wherever it is found in the world. But because popular respect is not a natural consequence of public office, but merely something which depends on untrustworthy public opinion, it vanishes when a man finds himself among those he does not regard his position in his home country as a special dignity. What I have said so far has to do with the attitudes of foreigners. Do you think that popular acclaim lasts forever among citizens in the place where it had its origins? The office of praetor once had great power. Now it is an empty name and a heavy burden on the treasury of the Senate. The man who in earlier times was responsible for food supply and distribution was counted a great man. Now there is no lower office in public esteem. For as I have said before, whatever does not have its own honor in itself but depends on the public whim is sometimes valued highly, sometimes not at all. Therefore, if public honors cannot make those who have them worthy of reverence, and if, in addition, they are often tainted by the touch of wicked men, and if their value deteriorates with the passage of time, and if they are contemptible in the eyes of foreigners, what desirable beauty do they have in themselves, or to give to others? Poem 4. Although proud Nero in his raging lust adorned himself with Tyrian purple and white pearls, he was hated by all his subjects. But this wicked man once assigned the tainted seats of consulship to venerable men. Who then can consider these men blessed who received their honors from evil men? Prose 5. Can royal power or familiarity with kings make men truly powerful? Perhaps you may say, as long as his happy situation endures, but both the past and the present are full of examples of kings who have fallen from happiness to misery. How wonderful is power which is found incapable of even preserving itself. And even though political power is a cause of happiness, is it not also a cause of misery when it diminishes? Although some human empires extend very widely, there are always some nations which cannot be brought under control. And at the point where power which makes rulers happy ends, there the impotence which makes them miserable begins. For this reason, rulers have always more misery than happiness. A famous tyrant who knew the dangers of his position symbolized his fears of kingship by hanging a drawn sword over the head of a member of his court. What then is the nature of this power which cannot rid a man of gnawing anxieties, nor save him from fear? Those who brag of their power want to live in security, but cannot. Do you consider a person powerful whom you see unable to have what he wants? Do you think a person mighty who is always surrounded by bodyguards? Who is more afraid than those whom he intimidates? Who puts himself in the hands of his servants in order to seem more powerful? And what shall I say about the followers of men in power when the power they attach themselves to is so obviously weak? They can be destroyed by the fall of their leader, or even by his whim while he is still in power. Nero forced his friend and teacher Seneca to choose his own manner of execution. Antoninus had Papinianus cut down by the swords of the soldiers, even though he had long been a power among the courtiers. Both of these unfortunate men wanted to give up their power. Indeed, Seneca tried to give his wealth to Nero and retire, but both were destroyed by the very greatness, and neither could have what he wanted. What then is the value of power which frightens those who have it, endangers those who want it, and irrevocably traps those who have it? Are those true friends whom we acquire by fortune rather than virtue? Misfortune will make an enemy of the man whom good fortune has made a friend, and what scoundrel is more deadly than one who has been a friend? Poem 5. The man who wishes to be powerful must check his desires. He must not permit himself to be overcome by lust or submit to its foul reins. For even though your rule extends so far that India trembles before you and Ultima Thule serves you, if you cannot withstand black care and live without wretched moaning, you have no power. Prose 6. As for glory, how deceptive it often is, and how shameful. The tragic playwright justly cries, "O fame, fame, how many lives of worthless men have you exalted?" For many men have achieved a great name based on the false opinion of the masses, and what is more disgraceful than that? Those who are falsely praised must blush when they hear the applause. And even if the praise is merited, what does it matter to the wise man who measures his virtue by the truth of his conscience, not by popular esteem? And if it seems a good thing to have widened one's fame, it follows that it must seem a bad thing not to have done so. But since, as I have explained earlier, there will always be some countries to which a man's fame does not extend, it follows that the person you think famous will be unknown in some other part of the world. In this discussion of fame, I do not think mere popularity even worth mentioning, since it does not rest on good judgment, nor has it any lasting life. Moreover, everyone knows that to be called noble is a stupid and worthless thing. If it has anything to do with fame, the fame belongs to others, for nobility appears to be a kind of praise which is really merited by parents. If praise makes a person famous, then those who receive praise are famous. Therefore, the praise of others, in this case of your parents, will not make you famous if you have no fame of your own. In my opinion, therefore, if there is anything to be said for nobility, it lies only in the necessity imposed on the nobility to carry on the virtues of their ancestors. Poem 6. The whole race of men on this earth springs from one stock. There is one Father of all things. One alone provides for all. He gave Phoebus his rays, the moon its horns. To earth he gave men, to the sky the stars. He clothed with bodies the souls he brought from heaven. Thus, all men come from noble origin. Why then boast of your ancestors? If you consider your beginning and God your maker, no one is base unless he deserts his birthright and makes himself a slave to vice. Prose 7. What now shall I say about bodily pleasures? The appetite for them is full of worry, and the fulfillment full of remorse. What dreadful disease and intolerable sorrow, the fruits of wickedness, they bring to the bodies of those who enjoy them. What pleasure there may be in appetites I do not know, but they end in misery, as anyone knows who is willing to recall his own lusts. If they can produce happiness, then there is no reason why beasts should not be called happy, since their whole life is devoted to the fulfillment of bodily needs. The pleasure one finds in his wife and children ought to be a most wholesome thing, but the man who protested that he found his sons to be his torturers spoke what may too often be true. How terrible such a condition can be, you must learn from me, since you have never experienced it firsthand, nor do you now suffer from it. In this matter I commend the opinion of Euripides, who said that a childless man is happy by his misfortune. Poem 7. It is the nature of all bodily pleasure to punish those who enjoy it. Like the bee after its honey is given, it flies away, leaving its lingering sting in the hearts it has struck. Prose 8. There is no doubt, therefore, that these are the wrong roads to happiness. They cannot take anyone to the destination which they promise. Let me briefly show you the evils within them. If you try to accumulate money, you must deprive someone else of it. If you want to cover yourself with honors, you will become indebted to those who can bestow them. And by wishing to outdo others in honor, you will humiliate yourself by begging. If you want power, you risk the dangers of your subjects' treachery. If you seek fame, you will become involved in difficulties and lose your security. If you seek a life of pleasure, but who would not spurn and avoid subjection to so vile and fragile a thing as his body? Indeed, those who boast of bodily goods are relying on weak and uncertain possessions. For you are not bigger than an elephant, nor stronger than a bull, nor as quick as a tiger. Fix your gaze on the extent, the stability, the swift motion of the heavens, and stop admiring base things. The heavens are not more remarkable in these qualities than in the reason by which they are governed. The beauty of your person passes swiftly away. It is more fleeting than spring flowers. And if, as Aristotle says, men had the eyes of Lynceus and could see through stone walls, would they not find the superficially beautiful body of Alcibiades to be the most vile upon seeing his entrails? Is it not your nature which makes you seem fair, but the weak eyes of those who look at you? You may esteem your bodily qualities as highly as you like, as long as you admit that these things you admire so much can be destroyed by the trifling heat of a 3-day fever. All these arguments can be summed up in the truth that these limited goods, which cannot achieve what they promise, and are not perfect in embracing all that is good, are not man's path to happiness, nor can they make him happy in themselves. Poem 8. Alas, what ignorance drives miserable men along crooked paths! You do not look for gold in the green trees, nor for jewels hanging on the vine. You do not set your nets in the high mountains when you want a fish for dinner, nor if you want to hunt deer do you seek them along the Tyrrhenian seas. On the contrary, men are skilled in knowing the hidden caves in the sea, and in knowing where white pearls and scarlet dye are found. They know what beaches are rich in the various kinds of fish. But when it comes to the location of the good which they desire, they are blind and ignorant. They dig the earth in search of the good which soars above the star-filled heavens. What can I say to show what fools they are? Let them pursue their riches and honors, and when they have painfully accumulated their false goods, then they may come to recognize the true. Prose 9. Up to this point, philosophy said, I have shown clearly enough the nature of false happiness, and if you have understood it, I can now go on to speak of true happiness. I understand well enough, I answered, that sufficiency is not attained by riches, nor power by ruling others, nor honor by public recognition, nor fame by public acclaim, nor joy by pleasures. But you have understood the reasons why this is so. I think I have a vague idea, I said, but I wish you would show me more plainly. The reasons are clear enough. What nature has made simple and indivisible, human error has divided and changed from true and perfect to false and imperfect. Would you say that one who lacks nothing stands in need of power? Of course not. You are quite right, for whoever is deficient in any way needs outside help. That is true, I said. Therefore, sufficiency and power have one and the same nature. That seems true. And would you say that a thing which is perfectly self-sufficient and completely powerful should be scorned? Or is it, on the contrary, worthy of honor? Undoubtedly, it is most worthy of honor. Then we may add reverence to sufficiency and power and conclude that all three are really one. That is true. Next, would you think such a thing obscure and base, or rather famous and renowned? Now think for a moment, whether that which is conceded to be self-sufficient, all-powerful, and worthy of great reverence can stand in need of any fame which it cannot give itself, and therefore seem in some way defective. I confess that being what it is must also be famous. It follows then that fame cannot be separated from the other three. That is true. Therefore, that which is self-sufficient, which can do everything by its own power, which is honored and famous, is not this also the most pleasant and joyful? I cannot imagine how anyone possessing all the attributes could be sad. And so, if the argument thus far is sound, I must confess that this thing must also be joyful. Then, philosophy went on, it must be granted that, although the names of sufficiency, power, fame, reverence, and joy are different, in substance all are one and the same thing. That must be granted, I agreed. Human depravity, then, has broken into fragments that which by nature is one and simple. Men try to grasp part of a thing which has no parts, and so get neither the part, which does not exist, nor the whole, which they do not seek. How is this, I asked. The man who seeks wealth in order to avoid poverty is not interested in power. He would rather be obscure and weak, and will even deprive himself of many natural pleasures so that he won't lose the money he has collected. But such a man does not even acquire sufficiency. He is powerless, plagued by trouble, held in contempt, and hidden in obscurity. Similarly, the man who seeks only power wastes his money, scorns pleasures and honors that carry with them no power, and thinks nothing of fame. But see how much he is missing. Sometimes he is without the necessities of life. He is plagued by anxieties, and when he cannot overcome them, he loses that which he wants most. He ceases to be powerful. Honors, fame, and pleasures can be shown to be equally defective, for each is connected with the others, and whoever seeks one without the others cannot even get the one he wants. So what happens when someone tries to get them all at the same time, I asked? He indeed reaches for the height of happiness. But can he find it in these things which, as I have shown, cannot deliver what they promise? Of course not, I said. Happiness, then, is by no means to be sought in these things, which are commonly thought to offer the parts of what is sought for. Nothing can be truer than this, I agreed. Now you have grasped the nature of false happiness and its causes. Now turn your mind's eye in the opposite direction, and there you will see the true happiness which I promised to show you. But this is clear even to a blind man, I said, and you have revealed it a little while ago when you tried to explain the cause of false happiness. For unless I am mistaken, true and perfect happiness is that which makes a man self-sufficient, powerful, worthy of reverence and renown, and joyful. And to show that I have understood you, I acknowledge that whatever can truly provide any one of these must be true and perfect happiness, since all are one and the same. Oh, my scholar, philosophy answered. Your observation is a happy one if you just add one thing. What is that? I asked. Do you imagine that there is any mortal and frail thing which can bring about a condition of this kind? Not at all, I said. But I think you have proved that beyond any need for further discussion. Then these false causes of happiness are mere appearances of the true good and merely seem to give certain imperfect goods to mortal men, but they cannot give true and perfect good. I agree, I said. Now then, since you know what true happiness is, and the things that falsely seem to offer them, you must now learn where to look for true happiness. This, I answered, is what I have eagerly looked forward to. But since, as Plato says in his Timaeus, we ought to implore divine help even in small things, what do you think is called for now if we are to gain access to the throne of the highest good? We must invoke the Father of all things, without whose aid no beginning can be properly made. You are right, said Philosophy. And she began to sing this song. Poem 9. O God, maker of heaven and earth, who govern the world with eternal reason, at your command time passes from the beginning. You place all things in motion, though you yourself are without change. No external causes impelled you to make this work from chaotic matter. Rather, it was the form of the highest good existing within you without envy, which caused you to fashion all things according to the eternal exemplar. You, who are the most beautiful, produced the beautiful world from your divine mind, and forming it in your image, you order the perfect parts in a perfect whole. You bind the elements in harmony so that cold and heat, dry and wet are joined, and the purer fire does not fly up through the air, nor the earth sink beneath the weight of water. You release the world's soul through the harmonious parts of the universe as your surrogate, threefold in its operations, to give motions to all things. That soul, thus divided, pursues its revolving courses in two circles, and, returning to itself, embraces the profound mind and transforms heaven to its own image. In like manner, you create souls in lesser living forms, and, adapting them to their high flight in swift chariots, you scatter them through the earth and the sky. And when they have turned again towards you by your gracious law, you call them back like leaping flames. Grant, O Father, that my mind may rise to thy sacred throne. Let it see the fountain of good, let it find light, so that the clear light of my soul may fix itself on thee. Burn off the fogs and clouds of earth and shine through thy splendor, for thou art the serenity, the tranquil peace of virtuous men. The sight of thee is the beginning and end, one guide, leader, path, and goal.